From frequent war to fragile peace. The extremely complicated treaties and incredibly sophisticated diplomacy of the insanely confusing European Union. War. Since ancient times, there have always been wars, someplace or another. This is how empires rise and fall. But in the modern, interconnected, and nuclear age, war can be extremely detrimental to the whole world. Times are especially tough in places where countries are squeezed tightly, such as Europe. But we seem to have not had a major war since the days of the Second World War. World War II has been one of the most disastrous wars ever fought, if not the most disastrous war. So it isn't a huge surprise that many organizations were created after the war, such as the United Nations and NATO. Today, we're going to focus mainly on one of these, the European Union. The European Union is very sophisticated, so we'll mainly focus on the creation of the European Union as well as the treaties. You're going to have to pay attention because it's going to get complicated. Trust me. Okay, let's start at the end of World War II. Infrastructure all over the continent is gone, and everyone's still giving each other tough looks. So, all the countries in Europe wanted to get a better relationship and prevent further war. That's one of the reasons they signed the Treaty of Brussels to create the first organization in Europe to create peace after World War II. W.U.D.O, or the Western Union Defense Organization, was a collection of 6 countries that agreed to a military alliance. Unfortunately, W.U.D.O was quite short-lived, and so the 6 countries signed another treaty, as they decided to integrate more non-militaristic institutions. Think about it. What should they do to create an organization that can maintain peace in Europe, a continent of shifting forces and military tactics? What the 6 countries decided to do would be quite surprising. These 6 countries decided to join the coal and steel community. But why? Well, coal and steel are the main materials needed for war, steel for weapons, and coal for energy. So, the European Coal and Steel Community, or the ECSC, was born in 1951 through the Treaty of Paris. 7 years later, on the day of March 29th in 1958, the Treaty of Rome was signed. That day, the 6 countries again decided to form another separate community, the European Economic Community, or the EEC. The EEC was very important, and it was the one that adopted the flag and the anthem of the European Union that we know of today. So, the same year and the same treaty and the same day, another community was created, Euratom, or the European Atomic Energy Community, as if 2 weren't enough. On April 9th, the merger treaty was signed and thus merged only the institutional executive bodies of the ECSC, the EEC, and Euratom, even if these organizations were technically separate. And 24 years later, in the year of 1991, on November 1st, the well-known Maastricht Treaty took place and officially merged the 3 communities into one and created a unified European community. A few years later became the first and most influential of the 3 forming pillars of the European Union, with the 2 other ones being the Common Foreign and Security Policy and the Cooperation and Justice of Home Affairs, which were merged until recently in 2007 through the famous Treaty of Lisbon, which finally created the European Union that we know of today. The next major agreement would be the Schengen Agreement in 1985, where 5 nations, a number which grew throughout the years, decided that borders along each other weren't really necessary. I mean, you don't need them, right? Schengen 1, the first version, made travel easier, though still including border guards, by making car visa. Car visa would be a green disc that would allow them to cross easily from border to border. Border guards across the continent were still allowed, but that stopped in 1990 when Schengen 2 was established and completely abolished all border checks. It made travel easier for everyone. However, recently, people are blaming the Schengen for the mass immigration of refugees, which shocked the countries, making them a little bit biased about this information. But I'm not really going to get into this because this might be disturbing for some people. After that came the Maastricht Treaty. or the Treaty on the European Union. It's known for formally establishing the European Union. It also introduced new individual rights, such as EU citizenship. Now, if you were a citizen of Belgium, you could travel to Germany without a visa because Germany is in the EU as well as Belgium. It also changed some of the nitty-gritty stuff like monetary reforms and a central banking system. It also laid the path for the universal European currency, the euro, created 10 years later in 2002. The most current treaty would be the Treaty of Lisbon, signed in 2007, as you might have or might have not heard about before. It mostly created reforms for the European Union, including the office for the EU President to create a face for the EU Council, the unification of the two foreign policies into a single foreign policy, and the ratification of the Charter of Fundamental Rights, originally from 2000, which created guaranteed individual rights to all EU citizens. It also reformed the voting system within the EU's inner workings. Oh, but wait, we're not done yet. Recently, there have been a rise of nationalism in European politics. Nationalist candidates have already got votes in the following countries: Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Slovakia, Hungary, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, France, and the Netherlands. Even though I said Switzerland, and Switzerland's not really part of the European Union, I'm just gonna be soft on this one. Nationalist leaders like to focus more on domestic affairs rather than international ones. Nationalist candidates also ride on an outrage of the 2015 or 16 refugee crisis in Europe, because some Europeans really don't like the idea of refugees. Nationalist candidates are in the far right, and some want to leave the European Union or close their borders.